Federal judges are picking up the pieces off the United States Supreme Court ruling last Friday that tried to take away out of their tool bag the ability to form and use nationwide injunctions to stop the nationwide harm that Donald Trump is doing through his abuse of the Constitution. Or did the Supreme Court take that tool away? What about if states have brought the lawsuit, like 19 states gets together and seeks an injunction? Does that Supreme Court decision still apply? And what if the injunction has to be nationwide, has to stop the violation of the Constitution or the Administrative Procedures Act? Can't the judge use it then if the scope fits the damage? I break it down for you, explain it to you on The Intersection, a brand new podcast I'm doing on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m., exclusively on the Midas Touch Network. Here's a clip. So let me talk about the first, it's like breaking news, the first federal injunction to be issued since the Supreme Court questioned whether federal judges have the power to issue nationwide injunctions in their cases. So the Supreme Court rules on Friday that, except for special exceptions that they weren't mentioning, but we think it means when states are involved, they don't want judges issuing nationwide injunctions. They only want the United States Supreme Court to issue nationwide injunctions, which means it takes a considerable tool out of the judge's tool bag, especially when they're dealing with nationwide harm cases, like in civil rights, constitutional violations, a president out of control, to just name a few. And so Judge DuBose, who was appointed by Joe Biden and confirmed, first openly LGBTQ+, first Black member of the Rhode Island federal judiciary, super smart, whip smart. She issued her ruling just today in the case involving the Department of Health and Human Services. That's our health department. It's currently, just to remind you, being run by a non-scientist, non-doctor, vaccine and science denier who's busy wrecking our public health and destroying the relationship between the American people and their health, and the American people and the states and the various agencies and sub-agencies and departments of the Department of Homeland Security that help keep us safe and keep us healthy and keep us alive. And in her order, she goes through and reminds me and us about all the ways that the Department of Health and Human Services protect life, health, and safety. The Center for Disease Control and Infectious Disease Control, pregnancy health, child health, cancer prevention, things related to Head Start, making sure children's health is set in the right path from the very beginning. Tobacco regulation, keeping it out of the hands of children. These are all things that run through the Center of Disease Control and Health and Human Services. And under the guise of reformation and abuse and whatever, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., under Donald Trump's command, started to defund and reorganize the Department of Health and Human Services to the detriment of all of us. 19 states ran into Judge DuBose, filed their case, and now she's ready to rule on her preliminary injunction. She's seen what the Supreme Court did. Supreme Court left open the door as to whether judges handling cases in which multiple states are in front of them still won't be able to issue nationwide injunctions because you have a nationwide harm. Yeah? The destruction of Department of Health and Human Services isn't a New Jersey, New York, Washington, etc. problem. It is a nationwide problem. So the judge, after going through in her 58 pages all the irreparable harm and the likelihood of success on the merits for the group of 19 states, focused on not on the constitutional, not on the separation of powers, although she quotes the separation of powers as being at the forefront of this. She said, I can do it under the Administrative Procedures Act because the decision by RFK Jr. was arbitrary and capricious. It was not based on science. It was not based on math. It was not based on a proper calculating analysis. It wasn't based on any of that. He even admitted publicly that he was overcutting and that he would figure it out later and probably have to rehire 20% of the people. Like, what are you even talking about? You're talking about public health, you buffoon. You moron. And so the judge, although dripping with sarcasm during parts of her decision, which I'm going to post on the Legal AF Substack so you can read it for yourself, she issued her injunction. And in her injunction, she said the following: I enjoin, I block the Department of Health and Human Services, and they've already been stayed until now, from restructuring, reordering, defunding, firing people at the moment until we continue to discuss these issues over time. And she said, my injunction, which I'm not going to stay, and I'm not going to require a large bond, I believe fits the contours of what the United States Supreme Court just said in their Friday decision. And if you disagree, I love this, the creative way around the brick wall, then you, and I'm looking at you, Trump, you file in the next 10 days or so a piece of paper that tells me that you think this does or does not comply with the Supreme Court precedent. I believe it does. You can tell me how, if at all, that case, we call it CASA Incorporated, maps onto my injunction power and my injunction rulings. And good day. I added the good day. That's what Judge DuBose just did. First judge to have to deal with the issue, having the benefit of watching, listening, and learning to the dozens and dozens of other cases are out there. We also have a decision that's going to be upcoming very, very soon. I want to switch gears now and go to Maryland and talk not about Abrego Garcia, but about babies. Babies born in this country since February 2025 to present. Born on American soil, born in American hospitals, whose citizenship is now up for grabs because Donald Trump has a birthright citizenship executive order where the merits of whether it violates the 14th Amendment or not has not been decided by any court because of the way that the Supreme Court has ordered and reorganized the procedure here. And so now what are we left with? We're left with, right after the decision on Friday that said, we're not going to allow nationwide injunctions, which Judge Boardman in Maryland had already issued to block the enforcement of the executive order, which she found to be unconstitutional, ripping away the 14th Amendment right to birthright citizenship. Now she had to revisit her injunction. And quickly, smartly, the lawyers from the American Civil Liberties Union, from the Georgetown Law Center, they filed lawsuits in courts telling the judges, we heard the Supreme Court, we're here now as a class action. The class is all babies born or to be born since February 2025 that need protection in one court. So Judge Boardman pulled everybody together for a hearing yesterday, and she grilled Mr. Rosenberg for the Department of Justice. She says, I want to get down to brass tacks. I've set a briefing schedule, she said, from now until the 27th of July for class certification, which has to be litigated, and for the temporary restraining order that would go with it. Are you going to deport? Is the Trump administration going to deport babies and remove them who have American U.S. birth certificates while I'm working on my decision? Yes or no? No, he said. Now, you can, I think, understand why this federal judge does not believe a word coming out of the Department of Justice and their mouth, right? I mean, there's the old joke. How do you know when the Trump administration and the Department of Justice is lying? Their lips move when they speak. I mean, this is against the backdrop of the whistleblower, Erez Ruveni, who used to be the head of immigration litigation, who dropped a 27-page bomb last week and said that his boss, Emil Bovee, who's up for the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, but is now the number 3 lawyer in the Department of Justice, who got rewarded because he was the criminal defense lawyer for Donald Trump. He instructed at a meeting, according to Ruveni, all the lawyers present to tell judges to go F themselves, literally, and to not give them information and to effectively lie to their face, not be candid to the tribunal, as we like to say in my world. Judge knows that. So she said, no, that's not going to do it. I want you to file by tomorrow, which is today, on Tuesday, a document that tells me your position as to whether, under the court's ruling in that same birthright citizenship nationwide injunction case I talked about, the CASA case, whether you are going to be removing and deporting and when. So they filed. It did not give, I'm sure it did not give the judge any great comfort, because it didn't give me any great comfort. It didn't say, which is what I would do if I were somehow in the upside down world, in the evil world, I was representing Donald Trump for the Department of Justice. I would say, Judge, we see what's on your mind. And to alleviate any concern, we will represent and stipulate that we will not deport, remove any child, baby born in America while you're making your decision. Does that make you feel better? We'll sign at the bottom line on that. But that's not what they did. What they said was, you asked us to tell you what we're going to do. We start with a full paragraph reproduction of the one paragraph decision by the United States Supreme Court last Friday. And then them saying the earliest, based on this order, that we believe we can remove is the 27th of July, which is exactly the date that the judge is just getting around to making decisions about class action. And then they say, but we also think there's a 30-day ramp-up period. So there's that. That's what they wrote. I'm only barely paraphrasing. So if I'm the judge, I'm like, this doesn't give me any comfort whatsoever. I'm going to expedite my emergency procedures. I'm going to move up the dates for when everything is due. I'm going to provisionally certify a class right now. I am going to enter a temporary restraining order right now. I am not going to wait to see what happens on the 27th of July, and not on my watch are babies going to be flying literally out of hospitals in America to El Salvador, Guantanamo, fill in the blank. How about this? How about this for a horror movie? Babies being sent to the alligator Alcatraz in unair-conditioned open tents in the middle of pythons, mosquitoes, and alligators. Why not? How is that any more depraved than anything else Donald Trump is considering? So now, having gotten from the Trump administration the response, which is like, go F yourself. If I'm Boardman and I'll be reporting on it on Legal AF and on the Midas Touch Network, I just say, that's not good enough. That's the opposite of making me feel better or having me have confidence in your decision. Judges are quickly recognizing that they have to use extraordinary measures to protect people from the Trump administration, which is completely out of control. Which brings me to the Abrego Garcia case. So in Tennessee, there's a magistrate judge, Judge Holmes. And the request to Judge Holmes from Abrego Garcia's lawyers, just to remind you, that's the guy kidnapped from Maryland in the middle of the night, sent on a plane to El Salvador to be put in a supermax prison without due process, even though he had an order in his back pocket from a federal judge, an immigration judge, preventing him from being sent to El Salvador. His return is ordered 9-0 by the Supreme Court, by Judge Zinnes in Maryland, and yet he only comes back after Donald Trump manufactures an indictment about human smuggling from 3 years ago during a traffic stop, and now he's in Tennessee at least. So he's under the power and jurisdiction of the federal court there. Judge Crenshaw, the Article 3 judge, Magistrate Judge Holmes, who magistrate judges in federal court handle most of the day-to-day in the criminal world, from bond and bail, conditions of release, discovery, before it gets to a trial and bigger questions at Judge Crenshaw's level. If you don't like the response you get from a magistrate judge, you can always, quote unquote, appeal it to the federal judge, to the Article 3 judge. This issue now is the judge already ruled after 9 days and hearings and trials that she had no grounds to keep Abrego Garcia on the human smuggling charge in pretrial detention. We presume liberty in this country. We presume somebody is innocent until proven guilty. And so the default is not that you go to jail and stay there until your trial. It's that you're out subject to your trial. And she found no grounds to hold him in. There's only 3 grounds. There's a minor child involved in the crime. That didn't happen. There's evidence of potential to witness tamper. Like, you leave this person out on the street, they're going to start killing witnesses. That's out. And the other one is flight risk. And she didn't find any of those things present. But she also understood that Trump had already made some declarations through his Homeland Security Office and Department of Justice that he was going to, well, they spoke with forked tongue. On one hand, they said, we're going to try him in Tennessee for human smuggling, and then we're going to deport him. And on the other hand, they said, we're going to deport him, and we're not going to let him stand trial. And that confusion, that conflicting, contradictory statements in this administration led Abrego Garcia's lawyers to run to Judge Holmes and say, keep him, don't release him yet. Because if you release him, a white van's going to show up and we'll never find him again. And he'll be accidentally, you know what I mean? Accidentally disappeared to a country not named El Salvador. And she agreed. And in fact, the Trump administration ultimately agreed. It's almost like they know they can't be trusted. They know that there could be another accidental deportation. So to protect him, they agreed to let him stay in the federal detention center under the auspices of the federal marshals rather than be transferred to immigration world. So think about this. Somebody now has to beg to stay in federal detention in a case about wrongful detention in order to protect themselves. You know, this is perverse. As a child, it reminds me in a bad way of this episode of a cartoon that I liked involving Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck, where, you know, Bugs Bunny outsmarted Daffy once again using Elmer Fudd, the hunter, to try to convince Elmer Fudd to shoot Daffy Duck now because it was duck season, not rabbit season. And they kept going round and around. It's rabbit season. No, it's duck season. And finally he got, Bugs Bunny got Daffy so tongue-tied that he actually had Daffy say out loud, you don't have to shoot me now. You can shoot me when you get home. That's where we're at now. We got people begging to stay in prison, to be kept away from Donald Trump. And so he's going to stay in federal detention for now until he can. And then Judge Zinnes, not to leave her out of the equation, she's trying to figure out whether she still has jurisdiction over him to order his return to Maryland. Because she was the original one that the family, the wife and the family of Abrego Garcia ran to her once they found out through watching video that he was sent in the middle of the night to El Salvador. And she's the federal judge, the Supreme Court, and the Fourth Circuit has supported not once, but twice. Just in case you missed the full hour-long version, I wanted you to make sure that you saw at least that clip, that segment. This way, it's easier for me to invite you to join our audience on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time and everywhere you get your audio podcast from. Right now, The Intersection, brand new show, brand new on YouTube, already in the top 100 of all podcasts. That's all because of you, but we need a little love. We're new. We need some oxygen. We need some more downloads on audio. We need some 5-star reviews and comments in the places where you review audio podcasts, and we need more views of the YouTube. That's where you come in. So I'm asking you respectfully, if you like the show, support the show. Intersection, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Just me, no holds barred, unfiltered, sometimes unhinged, only on the Midas Touch Network. So until my next report, my next All Things Legal AF, I'm Michael Popok. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.